Some places remember those who walk their floors, Caleb whispered to himself as he stepped through the warped wooden doors of the long-abandoned mill, Bruno at his side, ears high and amber eyes scanning the dim interior with the precision of a seasoned tracker. Sunlight pierced the cracked windows, scattering pale beams across the dust-covered machinery and broken crates, each ray catching floating particles that danced like tiny specters in the still air. The smell of damp grain and decaying wood hung heavy, mixing with the faint metallic tang of rust. Caleb's broad shoulders were tense, a lifetime of carrying burdens both visible and invisible pressing down as he moved with careful steps, the soles of his worn leather boots thudding softly against the uneven floor. Bruno's paws made lighter sounds, yet every tap seemed charged with anticipation, a silent warning of the secrets buried within these walls. A faint vibration hummed through the timbers, subtle at first, like the echo of a heart long silenced, and Caleb paused, hand brushing against the coarse surface of a support beam, feeling the thrum resonate up his arm. He exhaled slowly, a fog forming in the crisp morning air that crept through the broken panes, and as he rounded a corner, he caught sight of a narrow seam in the wall, partially hidden by shadows and cobwebs, a faint glint of metal catching the light. Bruno stepped forward, nose twitching, growl low and deliberate, and Caleb crouched, inspecting the hidden latch. The door yielded with a groan that seemed almost alive, swinging inward to reveal a cramped chamber lined with wooden shelves that sagged under the weight of time. Dust motes shimmered in the soft glow that spilled from a crack in the far wall, illuminating journals, mechanical parts, and fragments of glass that refracted the light into a scattering of gold and silver. The air was thick with the past, each object whispering stories of hands long gone, of labor and care and moments left unfinished. Caleb's fingers traced the spines of the journals, worn and yellowed, while Bruno circled, alert to every movement, every scent, every whisper that seemed to rise from the floorboards themselves. Outside, a breeze rattled the loose roof panels, carrying with it the scent of pine from the surrounding woods and the faint promise of rain, yet inside the mill, the space felt suspended, holding its breath, as though the building itself had been waiting for someone to arrive, someone who could understand its silent language. Caleb's pulse quickened as he reached for a small object tucked behind a stack of crates, a brass key engraved with worn initials, warm to the touch despite decades of neglect, and the walls seemed to pulse in response, a slow, measured rhythm that matched the subtle beat of his own heart. He straightened, squinting through the slanted rays of sunlight that cut across the room, and felt a strange comfort, a quiet recognition that he and Bruno had been guided here, not by chance but by the invisible threads of something older, something patient. The mill exhaled around them, a breath of wood and stone and memory, and in that moment, Caleb knew the journey had only begun, that each creak, each whisper, each pulse of the walls was a clue, a story waiting to unfold, and as Bruno nudged him toward the deeper shadows at the back of the room, his amber eyes reflecting both curiosity and trust, Caleb felt the weight of anticipation settle, ready to follow wherever this forgotten place would lead, carrying with it the promise of discovery, of secrets unearthed, and of a truth that would change the way he understood the quiet magic of abandoned places. Caleb took a careful step into the deeper shadows at the back of the chamber, the wooden floorboards creaking under the weight of both him and Bruno, whose tail was held high, sensing every subtle change in the mill's atmosphere, and as they moved forward, the light from the narrow windows painted long, slanted stripes across the dust-laden air, giving the impression that the room itself was layered in golden fog. Each breath Caleb drew carried the mingling scents of old pine, iron, and a faint sweetness like dried grain, reminding him that life had once pulsed through this place, that it had been a center of work and creation before it was abandoned to silence. He crouched to examine a rusted pulley hanging from a beam, its chain frozen mid-swing, and noticed a faint engraving at its base, almost obscured by decades of neglect, a series of letters and numbers that seemed to whisper a code, a message left behind for someone attentive enough to notice. Bruno's ears twitched and his nose lifted toward a corner where the floorboards bowed slightly, a subtle anomaly that would have gone unnoticed by any ordinary passerby. Caleb approached it cautiously, kneeling to run his gloved hands over the warped wood, feeling the slight give under his fingertips, and with a gentle press, a hidden hatch lifted, revealing a narrow spiral staircase descending into darkness, the air cooler and heavier as it rose from below, carrying the smell of earth and time compressed. Light from above barely reached the bottom, leaving shadows that clung to the walls and turned every object into a silhouette of mystery, and Caleb felt a shiver of anticipation, the kind that prickled at the back of his neck, as if the mill itself was holding its secrets, waiting to share them only with those who had the patience and care to uncover them. Bruno padded silently down the steps, ears alert, tail sweeping slowly behind him, and Caleb followed, counting each step in rhythm with the subtle vibration that seemed to pulse from the very walls, a heartbeat long forgotten but still present. At the bottom, the air smelled richer, heavier with the scent of dust, stone, and the faint tang of something metallic, almost copper-like, and as Caleb's eyes adjusted, he could make out the outlines of objects neatly arranged along the perimeter, old wooden crates, leather-bound journals, small mechanical devices, and stacks of paper yellowed with age. A single beam of sunlight filtered in through a crack in the wall above, illuminating a small wooden box tucked into the corner, its lid partially ajar, revealing a soft, golden glow from within. Caleb's breath caught, and he felt the familiar mix of wonder and reverence that always accompanied moments like this, the quiet awareness that he had been led here not by chance, but by a sequence of subtle signs, a path that required both observation and trust. Bruno sat beside him, chest rising and falling steadily, eyes fixed on the glowing object, as though urging him to see beyond the mere surface, to understand that whatever lay in this hidden chamber was more than a collection of forgotten belongings. It was a message, a story, and perhaps a key to something larger than either of them could yet comprehend. Caleb extended a hand, brushing away a layer of dust from the box, feeling the warmth of the wood and the faint vibration beneath his fingers, and as the light caught the edges of the contents within, he realized that this place, abandoned and silent for decades, had been waiting for someone exactly like him to uncover its hidden heartbeat, to listen, to understand, and to carry forward whatever secrets and wonders had been left behind. Caleb carefully lifted the lid of the small wooden box, and a warm glow spilled into the dim chamber, casting elongated shadows across the walls and illuminating dust motes that seemed to float like tiny stars suspended in the air. Bruno shifted closer, his broad chest brushing against Caleb's side, amber eyes reflecting the golden light as if trying to read the story hidden within. Inside the box, neatly arranged, were folded letters, yellowed photographs, and a small brass key, each object carrying the weight of decades, telling of lives once lived, of hands that had built, crafted, and cherished the space long abandoned. Caleb unfolded the first letter, the script delicate yet firm, and felt the careful, deliberate cadence of the words as if the writer had imagined someone patient and attentive would one day read them. The room felt alive, the walls breathing in sync with his own heartbeat, the faint vibration beneath his feet now more pronounced, resonating through the floorboards and up his legs, a quiet affirmation that he was in the right place at the right time. Bruno's ears flicked at every subtle sound, the low hum of the old mill amplifying the anticipation, and Caleb followed his gaze toward a faint glimmer behind a stack of mechanical parts, noticing a hidden compartment in the wall. Sliding aside the debris, he revealed a shallow cavity containing a collection of journals, their pages brittle yet preserved, filled with meticulous diagrams, notes, and sketches that chronicled the workings of the mill and the ingenuity of its previous occupants. Each page seemed to pulse with energy, a tangible record of creativity, hope, and quiet perseverance, and Caleb traced the illustrations with reverent fingers, imagining the lives that had animated this place. The air was cooler here, tinged with the scent of aged paper and the faint aroma of mineral-rich dust, and the sunlight filtering through the cracks above illuminated the intricate details, casting patterns that shifted and danced as if alive. Caleb's mind wandered to the past, picturing the hands that had turned these gears, built these machines, and left messages for a future that had not yet arrived. Bruno, alert and watchful, gave a soft, approving bark, and Caleb felt a sense of connection, a partnership between man and dog that had guided him here, through shadows and silence, toward this moment of revelation. The brass key seemed to hum in his palm, resonating with the pulse of the mill, and he realized that the letters, journals, and hidden compartment were pieces of a larger story, one that linked the past to the present and hinted at possibilities yet to unfold. A faint breeze stirred the chamber, carrying with it the subtle scent of pine and earth from the surrounding woods, brushing against Caleb's face and ruffling Bruno's fur, a reminder that the mill was not only a place of history but a living witness to the passage of time. With careful, deliberate steps, Caleb moved further into the room, Bruno close at his side, aware that the secrets he had uncovered were only the beginning, that the walls, breathing and alive, held more mysteries to be discovered, more messages to be read, and more moments that would test patience, reward observation, and ultimately reveal the quiet magic that had endured in this forgotten place for generations. Caleb carefully lifted the journals from the corner of the hidden chamber, brushing his fingers over the worn leather bindings, each crease and scratch a testament to the years they had endured, and as he flipped open the first volume, a faint scent of ink and cedar drifted into the air, mingling with the ever-present aroma of damp wood and mineral-rich dust. Bruno padded silently beside him, nose low, tail swaying with measured precision, eyes scanning every shadow, every subtle movement as if the walls themselves might shift at any moment, and Caleb felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with reverence, knowing that these objects had been left for discovery by someone who had understood the value of patience and observation. The pages were filled with meticulous sketches of gears, pulleys, and mill mechanisms, diagrams that detailed the operation of machinery now long still, accompanied by handwritten notes that hinted at innovation, resourcefulness, and an unwavering attention to detail, each sentence carrying the cadence of a mind that had devoted itself to craft and purpose. As Caleb traced a diagram of a hidden water channel, his fingers brushing the faded ink, he could almost hear the echo of running water beneath the floorboards, a rhythm that mirrored the gentle pulse of the mill itself, and he realized that the vibration he had felt earlier was not random but connected to the design, a subtle heartbeat of a place alive with memory. Outside, the light shifted, the sun lowering toward the horizon and casting long, golden beams through the broken windows, illuminating the dust in streams that seemed to dance like liquid light across the timbered walls. Caleb's breath fogged the cool air of the chamber, mingling with the scent of pine and earth wafting through the cracks in the exterior, a reminder that the forest outside and the mill within were part of the same continuum, each holding secrets, history, and quiet magic. Bruno lifted a paw and pressed it gently against a loose floorboard, amber eyes fixed on Caleb as if to guide him, and Caleb nodded, understanding that the dog's instincts were leading him toward the next piece of the puzzle, a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards that had escaped notice for decades. Caleb knelt, running his gloved hand along the warped wood, finding the subtle indentation that marked the entrance, and with a soft push, the board shifted, revealing a narrow cavity filled with more letters, trinkets, and a small, intricately carved box, the golden light from the initial artifact reflecting faintly onto its surface. Each object seemed imbued with significance, a message from the past waiting to be read and understood, and as Caleb set the journals aside and opened the carved box, he felt a quiet thrill, the same reverence he had always experienced when uncovering remnants of history that had been carefully preserved. Bruno rested his head near Caleb's knee, eyes alert and amber in the soft light, a silent companion in the unfolding discovery, and Caleb realized that the mill was not merely a building but a storyteller, whispering lessons of ingenuity, patience, and care across time, waiting for the right observer to listen, understand, and carry forward the narrative, each pulse, each creak, and each scent reinforcing the sense that they had been drawn here for a reason that was only beginning to reveal itself. Caleb carefully lifted the carved box from its resting place, the golden light reflecting softly onto the walls of the hidden chamber, and Bruno shifted beside him, chest rising and falling with deliberate, measured breaths, amber eyes alert to the faintest change in sound or shadow. The narrow staircase behind them allowed a sliver of sunlight to trickle in, catching dust particles and illuminating the faint textures of old stone and wood that lined the mill's interior, giving the space an ethereal quality, as though it existed slightly out of sync with the world outside. Caleb set the box on a sturdy workbench that had long been abandoned, fingers brushing against the smooth, worn surface, feeling the history pressed into the grain of the wood. Inside, he found a collection of letters tied with fraying ribbon, a set of small wooden gears, and a delicate, hand-carved pendant that seemed to hum softly in his hand, the warmth radiating subtly, a quiet confirmation that they had uncovered something meaningful. Bruno pawed at the edge of the workbench, nudging Caleb gently toward a corner where a series of floorboards appeared more worn than the rest, and Caleb knelt, pressing his hands against the boards to feel the faint vibrations that pulsed beneath, rhythmic and alive, as if the mill itself was guiding him to its next secret. He lifted a plank, revealing a narrow cavity containing more journals, sketches of the mill's machinery, and notes meticulously written in careful script, detailing not only the operation of the mill but also small reflections, observations, and hints left for whoever might come after. Caleb's eyes traced the lines of handwriting, absorbing the care and attention embedded in each word, imagining the life of the person who had left them here, and he felt a quiet connection across time, a thread linking him to the past. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of aged paper, dust, and the faint tang of metal from the old tools scattered about, while the sunlight shifting through the broken windows created long, dancing beams that moved with the subtle breeze. Bruno, still alert, sniffed at each item, giving a low, approving rumble that seemed to signal the significance of the find, and Caleb, feeling a mixture of awe and reverence, carefully turned the pages of a journal describing a hidden loft above the mill, a space filled with mechanical curiosities and personal artifacts preserved as though waiting for discovery. He could almost hear the faint creak of the upper beams and the soft pulse of the walls around him, as if the building itself was breathing in anticipation, and the sense of a living history, of a story paused for decades and now awakening, pressed gently against his consciousness. Caleb placed the pendant on the workbench, brushing off a layer of dust, and felt the subtle warmth linger against his fingertips, a tangible reminder of the human presence that had once filled the space with purpose and care. Bruno leaned against him, sensing the quiet gravity of the moment, and together, they turned toward the loft access described in the journals, knowing that each step, each discovery, was part of a larger tapestry, a story waiting to reveal itself, a secret meant to be uncovered by patience, observation, and the quiet courage of those willing to listen to the whispers of a place long forgotten. But not entirely silent. Caleb carefully climbed the narrow staircase leading toward the loft, each step groaning softly under his weight, the air growing cooler and tinged with the faint scent of aged wood and metal as sunlight slanted through the high windows, casting long shadows that stretched across the dust-laden floor and highlighted the motes that drifted lazily in the golden light. Bruno followed closely, pad silent against the worn wood, nose lifted to detect every subtle change in the air, ears flicking toward the faintest creak or whisper, his amber eyes glinting with alert intelligence. At the top, Caleb paused, resting a hand against the rough-hewn railing, feeling the subtle vibrations of the mill beneath, a living rhythm that seemed to synchronize with his own heartbeat, and he breathed slowly, drawing in the scents and sounds of the hidden chamber below, aware that every detail mattered, every movement told a story. The loft revealed itself gradually, a small space filled with relics of the mill's operational past, wooden cogs, brass fittings, leather-bound ledgers, and a collection of sketches pinned to the wall, illustrating complex mechanisms and intricate designs, each one a testament to the craftsmanship and foresight of the hands that had labored here. Caleb moved among the scattered objects with reverence, brushing dust from the edges of the ledgers, opening them carefully to reveal handwritten notes that spoke of ingenuity, patience, and quiet observation, the kind that anticipated a future visitor who would respect the mill's legacy. Bruno circled the perimeter, occasionally pausing to nudge a fallen tool or paw at a hidden groove in the floorboards, signaling that there was more to discover, and Caleb followed, kneeling to examine a faint outline in the floor that suggested a hidden compartment. Sliding aside a loose plank revealed a small cavity containing a bundle of letters wrapped in fraying ribbon, each envelope sealed with wax, the impressions faded but still discernible, hinting at messages preserved across time, intimate observations, and reflections meant for careful eyes. Caleb's fingers lingered over the wax seals, feeling the subtle ridges and indentations, imagining the lives of those who had carefully crafted and stored these messages, and he realized that the loft was more than a repository of mechanical knowledge, it was a chronicle of human care, of intention, and of the hope that someone attentive would come to witness and understand. The sunlight shifted, painting warm stripes across the journals and letters, casting the brass fittings into sharp relief, and Caleb could see every scratch, every mark, every imperfection that gave character and voice to the objects. He placed the letters carefully on the bench, and Bruno rested his head nearby, chest rising and falling steadily, eyes fixed on Caleb as if sharing in the silent wonder of discovery. The mill seemed to hum softly around them, the walls pulsing with a quiet energy, and Caleb understood that each artifact, each vibration, and each creaking floorboard was part of a larger narrative, a living memory waiting for someone to perceive it, to respect it, and to carry forward the story embedded in the very bones of the building. He traced the lines of sketches with a reverent finger, feeling the connection to those who had labored here before, while Bruno remained vigilant, the dog's instincts guiding and affirming each step of the unfolding exploration, a steady companion in the quiet illumination of the mill's long-forgotten secrets, and as the light shifted and dust motes swirled, Caleb sensed the anticipation of what lay ahead, understanding that the loft, the letters, the artifacts, and even the very walls themselves held lessons, memories, and perhaps a revelation that would transform their journey in ways only time could fully disclose. Caleb paused at the edge of the loft, letting his eyes drift over the collection of journals, letters, and mechanical sketches, the golden afternoon sunlight filtering through the cracked windows and illuminating layers of dust that hung suspended like tiny constellations, and Bruno, sitting attentively by his side, shifted his weight, ears flicking at the faint hum that seemed to pulse from the very walls of the mill. The soft rhythm resonated through the floorboards beneath them. A quiet, steady heartbeat that seemed to carry the memories of decades, each vibration telling of hands that had worked with care, of thoughts meticulously recorded, and of the space itself as a living witness to lives long past. Caleb reached for a particularly worn journal, opening it to reveal delicate handwriting that curved elegantly across yellowed pages, diagrams of gears and cogs, and annotations that hinted at inventions and experiments meant to be preserved, studied, and understood by someone patient enough to find them. The loft smelled of aged wood, faint traces of metal, and the lingering essence of old pine, the combination grounding him in the moment even as his imagination wandered through the histories the objects evoked. Bruno sniffed along the edges of a wooden crate, pausing to tap a paw against a faint indentation in the floor, and Caleb knelt beside him, discovering another hidden compartment beneath the boards, containing letters tied with ribbon and a small, intricately carved wooden box, the golden light from the previous artifact catching on its polished edges and reflecting across the loft in a gentle shimmer. As Caleb carefully lifted the lid, a soft glow illuminated the interior, revealing delicate tools, trinkets, and a pendant that seemed to pulse with warmth, a quiet energy that resonated with the vibrations of the mill itself. He held the pendant in his palm, feeling the subtle thrum echo through his fingers, while Bruno sat close, chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm, eyes fixed on Caleb with an unspoken understanding. The shadows in the loft stretched and shifted as the sunlight waned, painting the journals, letters, and artifacts in hues of gold and amber, creating a cinematic tapestry that made the mill feel alive, as though it were breathing alongside them. Each object seemed to tell a story, a thread connecting Caleb to the mill's past occupants, their diligence, their care, and their hope that someone would one day understand the legacy preserved within these walls. The soft creak of the loft boards, the subtle hum of the old machinery, and the faint scent of pine from the surrounding forest outside converged into a moment of quiet reverence, reminding Caleb that he and Bruno were not just observers but participants in an ongoing narrative, bridging time and space through their attentiveness and respect. As he placed the pendant back gently in the box, Caleb sensed that each discovery had meaning, that the walls, the objects, and even the drifting dust carried lessons and messages, waiting for someone to listen, to feel, and to carry forward the story of a mill that had quietly endured, breathing and alive, through decades of solitude and waiting for its secrets to be revealed. Caleb gently placed the carved pendant back into the wooden box, feeling the residual warmth linger in his palm, and for a moment, the loft seemed to settle around him, the faint hum of the mill quieting into a peaceful resonance, as though the building itself recognized the care and attention he had devoted to its secrets. Bruno sat alert at his side, amber eyes scanning every shadow, tail brushing the floor in slow, deliberate movements, a silent partner in the unfolding understanding of this place. The sunlight slanted through the cracked windows, illuminating the journals, letters, and mechanical sketches in a warm glow, casting long, shifting patterns across the dust-laden floorboards, and Caleb could see every detail with clarity, the subtle grooves in the wood, the faded ink on the pages, the slight imperfections that spoke of human hands and thoughtful effort. He opened another journal carefully, the pages crisp yet fragile, revealing notes that chronicled the day-to-day workings of the mill, reflections on the seasons, and insights into the meticulous craftsmanship that had sustained this place for decades. The air was filled with the scent of aged pine, a faint metallic tang from the tools, and the lingering aroma of the earth itself, drawing Caleb's senses fully into the moment, grounding him in the reality of the mill while allowing his imagination to reach across the years to those who had labored here. Bruno nudged a small pile of gears with his nose, and Caleb followed, discovering a hidden cavity beneath the floorboards containing more artifacts, a bundle of letters tied with ribbon, a few small carved figurines, and a delicate clockwork piece that seemed to pulse softly with the same rhythm he had felt throughout the building. Each item told a story, not just of the people who had left them behind, but of patience, care, and hope preserved across decades, a testament to the life that had once animated the mill and the intention of those who had created and maintained it. Caleb ran his fingers along the edges of the journals, absorbing the care and precision etched into every line, and felt a sense of continuity, of connection, as if he had become part of the living narrative of the space, a custodian chosen by circumstance and attentiveness. The shadows lengthened as the afternoon waned, the light shifting through the windows in slow, golden arcs that danced across the walls and floor, and the air carried a quiet stillness, punctuated only by the soft sigh of wine through the broken panes. Caleb rose, brushing the dust from his sleeves, and Bruno rose with him, both pausing to take in the expanse of the loft, the layers of history revealed and the promise of discoveries still to come. The subtle pulse of the building, the echo of decades past, and the gentle guidance of Bruno all combined to create a moment of deep awareness and anticipation, a sense that the mill had more to reveal and that each careful step, each attentive observation, would bring them closer to uncovering the full story, a narrative woven into the walls, the floors, and the objects that filled the space, awaiting the patience, understanding, and respect of those willing to listen and explore. Caleb stepped back from the loft, the journals and artifacts carefully arranged around him, Bruno close at his side, tail sweeping the floor with slow, measured movements as the last rays of sunlight slanted through the cracked windows, illuminating the dust and casting the mill in a warm, golden glow, a quiet reminder of the passage of time and the weight of the discoveries they had made. The pendant, the letters, the journals, and the hidden compartments all spoke of lives long past, of hands that had labored, created, and preserved knowledge and memories for someone who would come to understand. And Caleb felt the gravity of being that chosen observer, the sense that each item held a message, a whisper of patience and care left for him to uncover. Bruno sniffed the edge of the workbench, amber eyes alert, and Caleb followed his gaze to a small corner where the floorboards were slightly bowed, revealing yet another hidden niche beneath, a shallow cavity filled with delicate tools, mechanical components, and a small wooden box intricately carved with patterns worn smooth by time, the golden light catching on its edges and illuminating the fine details of its craftsmanship. Caleb lifted the box, and inside were additional letters and a small journal with pages filled with precise sketches and notes, documenting not just the machinery but also reflections, observations, and the quiet moments of those who had worked here, each entry a testament to care, diligence, and the hope that the story of this place would one day be witnessed. The loft, the walls, the beams, and the scattered objects all seemed to pulse subtly, alive with the memory of the past and the anticipation of the present, each vibration echoing through the floorboards and into Caleb's chest, a reminder that the mill itself was a storyteller, and that he and Bruno were part of that narrative, moving through its history with patience, attention, and reverence. He ran his fingers over the sketches, tracing the lines of gears and levers, imagining the hands that had drawn them and the careful thought that had gone into every mechanism, feeling a connection across time to those who had preserved this knowledge. Bruno sat calmly, watching him, tail flicking occasionally, eyes reflecting the soft golden light and the quiet understanding that this place held secrets that would unfold only to those willing to listen. Caleb stood, brushing dust from his sleeves, and looked around the loft one last time, taking in the journals, letters, tools, and small treasures that filled the space, aware that each item, each vibration, each whisper of air carried the weight of history and the promise of discovery. The sunlight faded slowly, leaving the mill bathed in soft amber hues, and Caleb felt a sense of completion mingled with anticipation, knowing that while they had uncovered much, the building still had more to teach, more stories to reveal, and more quiet miracles embedded within its walls, waiting for careful eyes, attentive hearts, and the gentle guidance of those who, like him and Bruno, had the patience to follow the pulse of a place that had long held its secrets in trust.